Good morning, good morning, good morning. I trust you have opened your eyes and woken to a wily Wednesday. We normally talk about a wily old coot or cat. I'm not suggesting that you're one. If you've joined us here on the Fifth Connection, today will have its own challenges. But let's start off the day by looking at how we connect the final dots concerning this character, and I'm going to do this in two more sections. This character called Melchizedek. If you have 3 rows of 3 dots each arranged one above the other, how do you connect those 9 dots with one line without lifting your pen and only going through each dot once? You've used this illustration a few times now, and if you haven't figured it out, you can go onto the internet. There are loads of examples of how to connect the 9 dots by drawing one line through each dot without lifting your pen. It's about the Cryptic King, this king that comes onto the scene in Genesis 15. And as soon as he arrives, he disappears. And then we don't hear of him again. We possibly picking him up in Psalm 110. And then you pick him up in the Second Temple period, which is the 400 silent years from about 500 BC to 100. And so during that period, of course, Jews are wrestling with how to connect the dots. Who is Melchizedek? And some suggest that he's a divine person. Some even say a human divine person. Some have even said he's Shem, the son of Noah. That's an idea that comes up in the post Old Testament period, in the Targums, the Mishnah and the Gemara, as the Jews wrestle with these ideas. They are recording their observations. Of course, nowhere does the Old Testament say distinctly that Melchizedek is a divine being. The example we looked at in a previous episode is that even the descriptor that he is without father and mother, it just means that he has no recorded lineage. The writer sees it fit to use and describe him that way to link him to Jesus, because he doesn't follow the traditional path that priests do. He's not an Aaronic priest. He's not of the tribe of Levi, which was the priestly tribe, but he's the one who is a priest forever. That is Jesus, and that after the order of Melchizedek. And so you see Melchizedek come up again. And this character is raised as the writer discusses with Christian Hebrews the importance of stick-to-itiveness. Stick with Jesus. Stick with Calvary. Stick with the cross. Stick to belief in Jesus. Trust Christ. Exercise faith in him. Pledge your allegiance to the Lamb. And don't lose your way. Don't forsake the way. So many have made shipwreck of their lives because they have forsaken the way. Across the book of Hebrews, 303 verses, 13 chapters, The writer does not say that these believers have defected. What he does say is that they have come close to defecting. They have come close to being cursed and burned. But the ground that has been consumed, the thorns on the ground and the thistles, the ground still exists. They still exist even though they experience deep discipline that comes from God. And so in verse 4 to verse 10 of chapter 7 of Hebrews, we have been introduced in the first 3 verses to this character again. And there is a very interesting interpretation that is given from verse 1 to verse 3, because Abram is the one who pays tithes to Melchizedek. But now something interesting is going to happen in verse 4 to verse 10. The implication of this interpretation of this character, Melchizedek, is to show that Jesus is a superior priest. As Melchizedek was a superior priest to Levi, the writer urges the Christian Hebrews to consider the greatness of Melchizedek in that he is greater than Levi because he received the tenth, the tithes from Abram, without being a descendant of Abram. And in verse 4 it says, see how great this man was to whom Abram the patriarch gave a tenth of his spoils. You find that as you go back to Genesis chapter 14. And those descendants of Levi who received the priestly office have a commandment in the law to take tithes from people, that is, from their brothers, though these also are descended from Abram. But this man, who is this man? Melchizedek, king of Salem, king of peace, king of righteousness, as is described in Genesis. This man who does not have his descent from them received tithes from Abraham rather, and blessed him who had the promises, which makes him superior to Abraham. It is because it is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal men, but in the other case, by one of whom it is testified that he lives. One might even say that Levi himself, and here comes the kicker. One might even say that Levi himself, Levi was a descendant of Abraham. One might even say that Levi himself, who receives tithes, pays tithes through Abraham. For he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. Levi, you see, was not yet born. But the New Testament text here says that he paid tithes. Who's he? Levi paid tithes to whom? To Melchizedek. Even though he was not yet born, when he was still in the loins of his ancestor, when Melchizedek met Abram. You see, the greater received a tenth from the lesser. Melchizedek receives a tithe from Abram. And the lesser, his unborn descent, that's Abram's unborn descent or descendant, is blessed by him. Who's him? Melchizedek is the antecedent who lives on. This is a very interesting idea, and I want to raise 2 ideas here just to get your thinking juices flowing. Because sometimes we read the scriptures and we put our brain in a parking meter. Well, you can't be asleep in this case. 2 things. It is from both the Old Testament and the Second Temple period that you can actually find this notion or this idea of non-terrestrial and premortal pre-existence. It's not a foreign idea in the intertestamental period. I'll just cite you one biblical example just to pique your curiosity. It comes up in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4 and 5. I'll just mention it here. This is the call of Jeremiah. It says in verse 4, "Now the word of the Lord came to me saying," what word? This is the word from the Lord. Verse 5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations." Jerry, before you were born, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. There is an idea of something that happens to a pre-mortal, a pre-existent one. Somebody's not yet born. And God has something to say about that person who will be born. So it's not such a foreign idea to read in Genesis 11 that Levi paid tithes through Abraham to Melchizedek. But Levi wasn't yet born. He wasn't yet a twinkle in Sarah's eye, as we would say. Some deep stuff just to think through and ponder. And then the second idea. Why is it that Christian students of the scriptures, why don't they take pre-existence seriously today? Is it just because church tradition has said that's a no-go zone, that's secret knowledge? And yet there are many isms within the Christian circles that talk about secret knowledge, the secret decrees of God that's only known to God and is not known to us. Deuteronomy, the book, verse 29 of chapter 29 says, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us and to our children." Those were the words given to Israel. What he has revealed is for us. What he hasn't revealed is his business. So we work with what we know, what he has revealed, what he says, he has spoken. So why didn't some early church thinkers and theologians not embrace pre-existence? Why did they reject it? Very interesting discussion. I think a lot of the answer lies in the dissonant thinking that many have concerning Romans 5 verse 12. I'm not going to shift into that. I just mention it. How did we, so-called, inherit the sin nature? It was passed unto us in that pre-born stage as we get birthed into the human family according to some isms or some traditions. So you may have a post-death person, as when someone dies, he has a conscious existence after death. How about a pre-birth existence? I just throw that in there to pique your thinking. Now, we often say, we go where no man has gone before. We take the line from Star Trek. Well, there is an idea to tinker around with. And so in this section, more dots are connected. Melchizedek is greater than Abram. And Jesus, after the order of Melchizedek, is greater than any divine being, greater than angels, greater than Moses, a human being, greater than Torah. He is greater than all. And Christian Hebrews need to get their heads around this. and not forsake the faith and go for second rate, inferior, faulty covenants and blessings of the past. They need to cling to Christ. He is the watershed of history. He is the watershed that brings change into our lives. And so this morning, as we close out, something to think on. Can you connect the dots in your own life when it seems that life is coming unglued? What line is there that runs and connects all the dots? It can be none other than the risen Lord. And sometimes when we cannot see, as we say, the hand of God, we can still trust the heart of God, because He's got our best interest at heart, even on this wily Wednesday morning, as we go into the day and we face the billows and the storms and the winds that will blow into our lives. I trust you will have a good day as you meditate and ponder on the scriptures. Join us tomorrow, same time, same place, for the next exciting episode. Have a good day.